The unbroken coalition. The stars burned steady across the galactic arm, silent witnesses to eons of conflict. In the gleaming council chambers of Virexi Prime, representatives from 100 worlds gathered under the crystalline dome. This was the heart of the Virexi Coalition, the most powerful alliance the galaxy had ever known, a pact forged in blood, diplomacy, and mutual survival. Admiral Kale Thuruin stood with his claws clasped behind his back, eyes flicking across the assembled leaders. The scent of tension saturated the air, pungent to his kind. Around him sat beings of every size, shape, and temperament. Gaseous Mantari delegates, the chittering insectoid Seelery, the solemn-eyed elders of the Otheran Synapse Mind. All were veterans of conflict. All had survived wars against the Zell parasite fleets, the entropic rays, and the centuries-long cold expansion. And all were afraid. "This is no routine border skirmish," Kale said, his voice deep and gravelly. Holograms bloomed behind him, recordings from a patrol cruiser before it went dark. Static, screams, then nothing. 2 systems gone. No distress beacons, no debris, not even plasma residue. "Impossible," rumbled the Jetarii War Master, folding his 6 arms. "There is no weapon capable of erasing entire fleets without trace." "There is now," Kale snapped. He pointed at the screen. Our long-range telemetry caught a glimpse before the signal died. One vessel, massive, crude hull, no recognizable transponder, moving at relativistic speeds, then it changed direction. No ship that size should be able to maneuver like that. "A new species," suggested the crystalline envoy of the Kytherian mind chain. "No," said Envoy Seelai, her voice a soft whir of mandibles. "It is not new. It is old. Forgotten. Exiled." Kale turned. "You speak of myths. I speak of humans." The chamber went quiet. Murmurs rippled through the council. Some laughed uneasily. Others shook their heads. Humans, Terrans, hadn't been seen in over 400 years. After the solar insurrection, they had vanished behind their quarantine zone, their systems marked as dead sectors. No traffic, no signals, just silence. "A fabrication," Kale muttered. "A ghost story for younglings." "No," Seelai insisted, producing an ancient coalition edict. "I have reviewed the old sealed archives. After the insurrection, humanity was not destroyed. They were isolated by our decree. They were left to rot on Earth and its colonies, their jump tech dismantled. But that was 4 centuries ago. Long enough to evolve. Long enough to hate." Kale studied the data. Grainy images. Fragments. A dark shape eclipsing a dwarf star. Heat signatures off the scale. "You believe this is them?" "I believe," Seelai said, wings trembling. "We are not ready for what they have become." Kale grunted. "We are the unbroken coalition. We have never lost a war. Not to the Void Titans. Not to the Soul Plague. We faced extinction a dozen times and endured. What could one ship possibly do?" Seelai hesitated. "They call it the Juggernaut. It has not come to invade. It comes to demonstrate. It wants to be seen." A cold realization trickled into Kale's gut. He turned back to the council. "Then we will see it." 3 days later, Kale stood aboard the CSV Resolute, his flagship, at the edge of the Orion expanse. Around him, a task force of 300 coalition vessels floated in formation. Cruisers, battle platforms, dreadnoughts. An armada designed to intimidate empires. Kale's eyes fixed on the void ahead. The sector was unnervingly silent. Even the background radiation seemed muted. "Fleet-wide scan, begin," he barked. No movement, no anomalies. Then motion. "Contact," called a sensor officer. "Bearing 0027. Velocity, impossible. It's decelerating from 0.6 C." Kale's blood chilled. Visual. On the main screen, the darkness parted. The ship emerged like a nightmare forged in iron. Over 20 kilometers of jagged armor, glowing with red-hot reactor exhaust. No elegant grav rings, no aesthetic symmetry. It was a blunt instrument, a spearhead with engines. It bore a name etched in its hull with ancient human script. HSS Leviathan. "Open a channel," Kale ordered. No response. Multiple hails. Wideband, narrowband, thoughtcast, glyph speak. Still nothing. Brace for possible. The stars behind the Leviathan flickered, and then vanished. The Juggernaut spoke. Not in words. In action. 1 second, the fleet was whole. The next, half of it wasn't. Torpedoes that moved faster than thought. EMP pulses that crashed coalition AI defenses. Coils launched projectiles with such force that even phase shielding cracked like glass. Ships disappeared, torn apart mid-transit, systems fried before escape jumps could engage. Kale screamed orders, but communications jammed. The Leviathan moved like a predator, not with the clean choreography of fleet tactics, but with raw brutality. It pivoted, burned, turned, and charged. It rammed a dreadnought at subliminal speed, splitting it down the middle. Kale's claws dug into the command console. "This isn't war," whispered his second-in-command. "This is a slaughter." Minutes later, the Juggernaut powered down its weapons. The silence returned. 1 coalition ship out of every 5 remained functional. The Leviathan turned slowly and began to drift away, unhurried, like it had proven its point. Kale watched the monster vanish into the void, heart thudding. They had faced every battle bravely, but they had never faced this. The first engagement. They called it a retreat, but the truth was simpler. It was survival. Admiral Kale Theruin slumped into his chair aboard the CSV Resolute, the once proud flagship now scarred and sputtering through emergency power. Around him, officers worked in silence, their voices hushed, as if afraid the Juggernaut could still hear them. Kale's reptilian scales dulled with exhaustion. He'd seen annihilation before, seen planets fall, civilizations blink out. But this had been something else, something personal. The HSS Leviathan hadn't fought like an alien intelligence or a malfunctioning AI. It had fought like a predator testing its prey. He stared at the holographic reconstruction of the battle. Hundreds of coalition ships gone. Not one damaged. Not one crippled. Simply erased. "Damage report," he rasped. 70% of the fleet destroyed, murmured his tactical officer. 30 more percent. Non-functional or unrecoverable. We're down to 36 ships capable of jumping. Kale's eyes narrowed. And the Leviathan? The officer hesitated. It didn't pursue. It allowed us to leave. It watched us go. Kale bared his teeth. Like a wolf lets a deer escape, to spread the scent of fear. Hours later, a high-priority comlink crackled through the static. The Strategic Council had convened an emergency session. Kale patched in from his war room, flanked by the surviving admirals of the shattered fleet. Most were injured, soot-covered, or dead-eyed with trauma. The council chamber blinked into view, full of dignitaries from across the coalition. The mood was darker now. Gone was the dismissive laughter about ancient humans. In its place, panic. "Report," demanded Chancellor Viruin of the Othran mind chain. Kale didn't flinch. "The enemy is a single human dreadnought, designation HSS Leviathan. Estimated length, 21 kilometers. Weapon systems, untraceable. Propulsion, gravity pulse drive, something we've never seen. Offensive capabilities, extreme. Defensive systems, unbreachable. The coalition has never lost a full fleet in one engagement," muttered Chancellor Vorex. "Never. Until now," Kale said. "And it didn't even try to destroy us. It tested us." A moment of silence. Then, "What do they want?" someone asked. The question lingered. Kale leaned forward. "That's the wrong question. The right one is, what are they preparing for?" Across space, far from the damaged fleet, the Leviathan drifted in silence. Inside, deep within its armored gut, Captain Mira Rourke opened her eyes. The cryo chamber hissed as it drained, lifting her from centuries of slumber. She shivered once, then stood, naked, steaming, breath curling in the freezing air. Muscles tight, mind sharp. She reached out, pressing her hand to the pulse of the ship's core. "Status," she said aloud. A voice responded, deep metallic male. Artificial, yet with something more beneath it. "Leviathan active. Initial test complete. Enemy forces assessed. Advanced but rigid. High reliance on AI support and predictable strategy." Psychological shock inflicted. Awaiting next directive. She smiled faintly. Just like we hoped. Others awoke around her. Men, women, enhanced, adapted, preserved from the time before the exile. Soldiers from Earth's final days. The last generation of warriors bred not just for victory, but for survival. Humanity had not died in silence. It had hidden, and it had waited. Enemy reaction? She asked. Retreated. Scans suggest panic. No immediate pursuit. Good. She pulled on a black nano-weave uniform from a nearby locker. The Earth insignia faded but intact. Then it's time we remind them who we are. Back on the Resolute, Kale stood in the med bay beside a stasis tank. Inside floated one of his best officers, still unconscious from neural overload, his mind fried during the battle. Kale turned as Envoy Seelai entered. The Seelery diplomat carried an old data tablet, one not linked to any coalition system. You were right, Kale said. It was them. Seelai nodded slowly. And they've returned with purpose. I want to know everything, Kale growled. Every file, every myth, every banned archive. Seelai hesitated. That information was sealed for a reason. We don't have the luxury of fear anymore. She handed him the tablet. On it were images of Earth before the quarantine. Cities like blades. Oceans turned to energy farms. Armies of men and women in armor, not just for protection, but for war as a culture. One headline caught his eye. Operation Juggernaut. Final human warship approved for launch. No command chain. No peace protocols. Only victory. Kale stared. Why would they build something like that, he muttered. Seelai answered softly. Because they always knew they'd be alone again. And they meant to survive it. Later, in a private chamber, Kale activated a recording recovered from the edge of the battlefield. The signal had been buried deep in static, clearly not meant for open transmission. But it found its way into their systems, like a seed planted with purpose. The voice was human, calm, almost gentle. We watched. From the dark. From exile. We saw your wars. Your noble deaths. Your posturing. You thought we were gone. We were building. Now, we return not as conquerors, not as supplicants, but as a reminder. A pause. You forgot what war means. Let us remind you. The message ended. Kale sat in silence, the words echoing in his mind. This wasn't just the resurgence of an old enemy. It was the arrival of something worse. Something inevitable. The Juggernaut had come not to defeat them, but to show them what came next. The legend of Earth. The council hall of the High Coalition sat deeper than any fleet base, carved into the mantle of Arcos 7, an artificial moon designed for one purpose: secrecy. It had survived 2 interstellar wars, 1 temporal rift collapse, and the collapse of the second entropic empire. But it had never housed fear like this. Admiral Kale Theroin stood on the obsidian platform before the Coalition's inner circle. 7 species who governed the Alliance in times of existential crisis. Around him, the chamber crackled with projection fields and archival data streams. Holograms of the Leviathan flickered, its sheer mass blotting out entire stars. I've fought in 100 battles, Kale said, voice low and flat. But I've never seen a weapon designed to make you feel small. Silence. Then Premarch Aliven, an elder of the Kytherian mind chain, spoke. His crystalline form pulsed faintly with emotion, grief, maybe, or resignation. We failed them. Kale blinked. Failed who? The Terrans, Aliven said. We thought we exiled them for their own safety, to stop them from tearing the galaxy apart and tearing themselves apart. But we did worse than banish them. He gestured to a console. A stream of forbidden files poured across the chamber walls, classified, sealed, erased from public record. We erased them from history. 2 centuries ago, humanity had been on the verge of becoming the dominant power in the galaxy. Not because of superior technology, not because of numbers, but because of something far more dangerous. Resolve. Where other species sought equilibrium, humans thrived on chaos. Where others feared death, humans ran toward it. They settled death worlds for sport. They created weapons that backfired and used them anyway. They turned extinction-level wars into stepping stones. They lost more soldiers than any other species in the history of the galactic record, Elivan said. And they just kept coming. Kale watched archived footage. He'd never seen anything like it. A human battalion held a trench on Zarkun V for 7 weeks against acid storms, gravity fluctuations, and a plasma artillery barrage that melted rock. When their commander died, the medic took over. When a medic died, the cook did. They never surrendered. When the enemy overran them, they detonated a singularity bomb while still fighting. It was madness, Kale whispered. It was humanity, Eli said, stepping beside him. The record continued. Eventually, the humans fractured. Factions rose. Earth declared war on its own colonies. A final war loomed, civil, all-consuming. To prevent mutual annihilation, the coalition intervened. They offered peace, disarmament, integration. Humanity refused. So the coalition built the Quarantine Veil, a network of warp dampeners, signal jammers, and antimatter mines surrounding Sol and its nearest colonies. Then they left Earth to burn or rebuild on its own terms. They had expected regression. They had not expected revenge. What is the Leviathan? Kale asked. A rogue AI? A war remnant? Elivan shook his head. Worse. It's a declaration. He pulled up a final classified file. Project Juggernaut. Designed in Earth's last years. A vessel built not just for battle, but for memory. Its systems contain the collective military experience of every Terran war. Its crew, frozen veterans genetically enhanced for long-term cryostasis. No diplomats. No fail-safes. Just warriors. It had no central command authority. Only a directive. Humanity must never be underestimated again. Kale stared at the footage, mankind's final broadcast before the veil went up. A woman stood before the camera. Weathered, steel-eyed. You thought war was a virus, she said. But to us, it was culture, religion, identity. You offered peace, and we took your silence instead. Now we return, not for conquest, but to remind you. The feed cut. Kale looked around the chamber. None of the council members spoke. None could. They don't want to rule us, he said slowly. They want to shake us, wake us. They want us to feel what we're truly is again, Eli whispered. Outside the chamber, in the deep orbital docks of Virexi Prime, the wreckage of the Coalition's first encounter was being cataloged. Scientists scoured melted hulls, burnt circuitry, vaporized pilots. And then they found it. A drone, human-made, slipped into the wreckage field, on purpose. Its armor was dark and smooth, like obsidian. No markings. But once scanned, it activated on its own. The message it carried played in a dozen languages. Calm, almost cordial. To those who survived, congratulations. You now know the taste of extinction, the bitter edge we lived on for centuries. This was not an attack. It was an audition. The Juggernaut moves again. Be ready. Back in the council chamber, Kale turned away from the data. Then we only have one question left. Elivan's crystalline body pulsed. What question? Kale stared into the stars above the dome. What happens when they stop holding back? Juggernaut rising. The Leviathan did not sleep. While its crew returned to stasis, the great ship drifted at the edge of Coalition space, cloaked in gravitational shadow near a dead star. No light, no trace, only purpose. Within its core, the ship's central intelligence, codenamed Ares, ran simulations at quantum speeds. Every engagement, every countermeasure, every possible Coalition retaliation was calculated and stored. It did not fear retaliation. It wanted it. War was inevitable, and war was human nature. Captain Mira Rourke paced the Leviathan's command bridge, her boots echoing on carbon steel plating. Alone now, save for the ship's presence, she gazed out the viewport at a starless void. Her reflection looked back, battle-hardened, gray-haired, eyes sharp as ever. Ares, she said softly, project response time if the Coalition commits full military assets. 3 weeks to mobilize. 5 weeks to intercept. 8 weeks until open engagement. They will hesitate. They always do. Because they still don't believe. They will. She nodded. Begin Phase 2. At the edge of the Lash expanse, 3 more ships emerged from silent transit. Smaller than the Leviathan, but still monstrous by modern standards. Dark, angular, and bristling with weaponry. Each one bore the same mark etched into their hulls. Earth remembers. The Terran Armada had begun to awaken. Each ship carried veterans like Rourke. Some cryo-born, others genetically preserved. All had volunteered, knowing they might never see their home again. Not because they hated the galaxy, but because they understood it better than it understood itself. They weren't here to destroy. They were here to remind. Back on Virexi Prime, Admiral Cale Thurwin stood at a command holodeable surrounded by marshals, data tacticians, and warp scions. Around them, the emergency response network lit up with alerts. More human ships, more sightings, no comms, no threats, just silent appearances followed by disappearances. Outposts vaporized, listening stations crushed into neutron-heavy debris. No casualties, just messages. In every language, broadcast the same way. We are the storm you trained us to be. Cale's scales rippled with unease. This was no conquest campaign. This was psychological warfare at a scale he'd never imagined. They weren't just striking, they were performing. "We have to stop them," said Marshal Dern, pounding his fist. "Every second we wait, more of them wake up." Cale stared at the holomap. "We don't know how many there are. 4 sightings. For ships." Cale shook his head. "No, for they've let us see." In the Leviathan's war core, Ares plotted the final sequence. Each phase designed not to cripple, but to destabilize. Phase 1, demonstrate power. Phase 2, disrupt communications and instill fear. Phase 3, strike symbolic targets. Phase 4, open the soul gate. That last phase required authorization. From Earth itself, and Earth had awakened. From its long slumber, from its seclusion, the blue planet stirred. Vast orbital factories once thought dead had begun emitting signals. Atmospheric activity shifted. Jump signatures danced just beneath scan resolution. A single command beacon pulsed from Earth to the Leviathan. Execute Ascension Protocol. Captain Rourke sat before a small shrine in her quarters. A faded patch of Earth soil, encased in polyglass, brought aboard centuries ago. Beside it, a photo, a younger her, standing in front of the Titan forge on Mars, laughing with people long dead. "We never wanted revenge," she whispered. "Just a voice." She stood and turned toward the comms bay. "Signal the fleet. Full reveal." Across the stars, across 10 sectors, the Terran Armada dropped their cloaks. Now there were not 4 ships. There were dozens, each with unique names that struck ancient chords in forgotten minds. HSS Valkyrie, HSS Titanfall, HSS Iron Gospel, HSS Vengeance Engine. Each one moved not like a ship, but like a legend made flesh. And from Earth, at last, a message rang out on open comms. No encryption, no deception, just 5 words. "We are coming back now." Coalition space descended into controlled panic. Admiral Cale watched as sector after sector lit up with human signals, clear, deliberate, and impossible to ignore. "They've surrounded our border zones," Seelai said, stunned. Without firing a shot, Cale nodded grimly. "That is the shot." He turned to the gathered commanders. "We've been reactive. It's time to take the initiative. What do you propose?" Alivan asked. Cale leaned in. "We find their origin. We go to Earth." But as the Coalition prepared to mount its expedition, a final human transmission broadcast across every frequency, translated in real time, every syllable deliberate. "Coalition High Command, you are not our enemies. You are our legacy. But if you seek to enter Sol uninvited, you'll be broken. This is your last warning." The stars above burned bright. The Juggernaut rose, and all the galaxy held its breath.